Do you remember the first movie scene that genuinely unsettled you as a child, even though it wasn't technically a horror film? For many of us, The Mummy, 1999, was exactly that experience. Not because it tried to terrify us non-stop, but because it blended danger, mystery, and spectacle in a way that lingered long after the credits rolled. And here's a question worth asking. What if the version of The Mummy we remember almost never existed at all? Behind the desert dust and adventure lies a story far stranger and riskier than whatever appeared on screen. And like the best legends, The Mummy was almost never born the way we remember it. Before Brendan Fraser ever cracked a joke, swung a fist, or flashed that crooked grin, Universal Studios had a very different image in mind for Rick O'Connell. They didn't want a charming underdog. They wanted a guaranteed superstar. Someone bulletproof at the box office. Someone safe. So they chased the biggest names in Hollywood. Tom Cruise passed. Brad Pitt wasn't interested. Matt Damon said no. Ben Affleck walked away. One by one, the doors closed. Then came Leonardo DiCaprio, fresh off Titanic, the biggest film the world had ever seen. He wanted the role. The studio wanted him. It seemed inevitable. But contracts are ruthless things. DiCaprio was locked into the beach. Scheduling conflicts killed the deal. Ironically, the beach would later be delayed anyway. One decision. One calendar conflict. One quiet, what if, that changed cinematic history forever. Because without that delay, Brendan Fraser never becomes Rick O'Connell. And today, it's almost impossible to imagine anyone else in that role. Fraser wasn't the obvious choice. He wasn't the safe choice. But what he brought couldn't be manufactured. Warmth. Vulnerability. Physical comedy that felt human, not rehearsed. He didn't play Rick like an invincible action god. He played him like a man constantly one mistake away from disaster, and that's exactly why audiences fell in love with him. That gamble paid off in a way studios rarely see anymore. But casting wasn't the only risk The Mummy took. The film itself was a rebellion against where Hollywood was headed. At a time when CGI was rapidly becoming the solution to everything, The Mummy leaned heavily on physical reality. Take the infamous mummification ritual. The scene where Damon is coated in gold still makes viewers uncomfortable, and that discomfort is real. There was no CGI safety blanket. Metallic paint was applied directly to the actress's body under relentless studio lights. It took hours. Breathing was difficult. The heat was overwhelming. The claustrophobia wasn't acting. And that's why the scene works. You feel it. Modern blockbusters can generate entire worlds inside computers, but how often do they ask actors to physically endure something so uncomfortable that it bleeds through the screen? Somewhere along the way, that kind of commitment became rare. What's even more shocking is how close The Mummy came to becoming something unrecognizable. In the early 1990s, the project was envisioned as a dark, low-budget horror film. Clive Barker, the twisted genius behind Hellraiser, was attached. No adventure. No humor. No romance. Just blood-soaked rituals, cult violence, and body horror that pushed boundaries. Universal got cold feet. They feared it was too extreme. Too niche. Too disturbing for mainstream audiences. So they pulled the plug and walked away from that version entirely. At the time, it probably felt like a failure. In reality, it was a rebirth. That creative collapse made space for something new, something timeless. A throwback adventure that honored classic Hollywood spectacle while speaking to a modern audience. Humor replaced brutality. Wonder replaced dread. And instead of shock value, the film aimed for emotional connection. Ask yourself honestly, would a grim horror version of The Mummy still be talked about decades later? Or would it have faded into obscurity like so many forgotten experiments? Sometimes, what feels like compromise is actually destiny adjusting course. But even with a lighter tone, the danger never disappeared. Filming in the Moroccan desert was brutal. Temperatures soared. The sun was merciless. Crew members battled dehydration daily. Venomous insects were a constant threat. Sandstorms shut down production without warning. Food poisoning swept through the cast and crew so thoroughly that nearly everyone fell ill at least once. Production insurance didn't just cover injuries, it covered kidnapping. This wasn't glamorous filmmaking. It was survival. When you watch those sweeping desert shots now, knowing what went into capturing them, they carry a different weight. Every frame is earned. Every horizon was paid for in sweat, exhaustion, and risk. And sometimes, that risk crossed terrifying lines. During the hanging scene, Brendan Fraser nearly died. A safety rig malfunctioned. He lost consciousness. The moment went from scripted drama to real panic. Cameras stopped. Crew members rushed in. The set fell silent. For a brief moment, the illusion shattered, and everyone realized how thin the line truly was. Fraser survived. And then he came back. He finished the film with the same humor, the same physicality, the same energy that audiences would later adore. He didn't retreat. He didn't harden into a distant action star. He remained open, playful, human. How often do we forget the real risks actors once took, before digital doubles and green screen safety nets insulated everything? Rachel Weisz, too, carved her legacy under genuine danger. Her iconic library collapse scene used over 2,000 real books. Real shelves. Real chaos. One mistimed step could have ended her career, or worse. She refused a stunt double. The panic on her face wasn't fully scripted. It was instinct. The laughter that follows the scene masks real tension behind the camera. Would a studio even allow that today? And maybe that's the deeper reason The Mummy still resonates. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. It wasn't manufactured by algorithms or test audiences. It was made by people taking risks, creative, physical, emotional risks, because they believed the story was worth it. Brendan Fraser didn't just play a hero. He became a symbol of an era when heart mattered more than polish. When charm could outshine spectacle. When failure was possible, and that possibility made success meaningful. Behind the monsters, the explosions, and the laughter lies a quiet truth. The Mummy worked because it was made by humans, for humans, under conditions that demanded courage. And maybe that's the most inspiring part of all. Not the treasure. Not the magic. But the reminder that sometimes, the greatest adventures happen behind the camera. When people choose passion over safety, and heart over certainty. The Mummy wasn't born as a guaranteed hit. It was built in dust, sweat, and doubt. The cast and crew weren't stepping into a polished blockbuster machine. They were stepping into the unknown. Filming in the Moroccan desert meant brutal heat, sandstorms that erased entire setups, and days where nothing went according to plan. Yet no one walked away. They leaned in. Brendan Fraser didn't just play Rick O'Connell, he lived him. He endured injuries, exhaustion, and near disasters with a grin that never felt forced. His charm wasn't manufactured, it was resilience disguised as humor. You can feel it in every frame. That kind of presence doesn't come from confidence alone, it comes from believing in the moment, even when everything around you feels unstable. Then there's Arnold Vosloo as Imhotep. His transformation wasn't just acting, it was endurance. Layers of prosthetics sealed his body for hours each day, leaving his skin burned and swollen. Speaking ancient Egyptian, carefully reconstructed by scholars, he delivered lines no audience would consciously understand. And yet, everyone felt them. That's the power of commitment. When an artist respects the world they're building, the audience senses it instantly. Authenticity has a gravity that no amount of digital spectacle can replace. Behind the scenes, the risks were everywhere. The visual effects were ambitious for their time, stitched together with practical stunts and early CGI. Nothing was safe. Nothing was guaranteed. Universal Pictures itself didn't believe the film would succeed. Early test screenings were harsh. Too much. Too silly. Too weird. Executives quietly prepared for disappointment. But something remarkable happened. Audiences didn't want restraint. They wanted joy. They wanted romance, humor, danger, and spectacle, all at once. The very elements critics doubted became the soul of the film. The Mummy didn't apologize for being fun. It embraced excess, leaned into adventure, and trusted the audience to come along for the ride. That's why it still matters. In an era where many blockbusters feel engineered rather than inspired, The Mummy stands as a reminder of what happens when creators take creative risks. When actors bring warmth instead of irony. When danger feels real. When stories breathe. It wasn't perfect, and that's exactly why it worked. It was human. And maybe that's the lesson that lingers long after the credits roll, that choosing passion over safety doesn't always lead to failure. Sometimes it leads to legacy. So now I'll ask you, when you think of The Mummy, 1999, which moment still lives rent-free in your memory? And why do you think it never let you go?